This photograph was taken in the winter of 1886, inside Ward C of Lancaster Moor Hospital. It is one of only 11 surviving plates from a documentation series commissioned by the Lancashire County Asylum Committee. The image shows a long, narrow corridor, gas lamps mounted at intervals along the left wall, a single wooden chair near the far end, and standing in the middle of the frame, facing the camera, a nurse identified in hospital records as Miss Edith Poole. She stands upright, hands folded at her waist, her expression composed, unremarkable in every respect, except for the shadow she casts on the floor behind her. The gas lamps are mounted to her left. Every other object in the corridor, the chair, the door frames, the iron radiator pipes, casts its shadow to the right, consistent with that light source. But the shadow extending from Edith Poole falls to the left, directly toward the light. This is what the Lancaster Moor Archive refers to in a single penciled annotation on the plate sleeve as the wrong shadow. The plate was processed by J. Hartley & Sons, a commercial photography firm based in Preston that held the asylum contract from 1884 to 1891. Their processing ledger, now held at the Lancashire Archives, records the plate under reference LMH-C-07. The entry is dated the 14th of February, 1886. Beside the reference number, in a different hand, someone has written a single word: defective. No further explanation. No reprint was ordered. The plate was filed and, by all evidence, forgotten. Look at the image again. The corridor stretches away from the viewer. The floorboards are bare, darkened with use. The gas lamps produce a visible flare on the left side of the frame, slightly overexposed, which tells us the exposure time was long, likely several seconds. Edith Poole would have had to stand perfectly still. And she did. Her outline is sharp. There is no motion blur on her figure, but her shadow is equally sharp. If the shadow were caused by a second, unrecorded light source, a lantern carried by an assistant perhaps, or a reflection from a window, it would need to have been positioned to her right, behind the camera and at a low angle. The corridor's architectural plans, which survive in the hospital's building committee minutes, confirm there were no windows on the right wall of Ward C. It was an interior partition, shared with the men's dormitory. Solid brick. No glass. There was no second light source. In March of 1886, 1 month after the photograph was taken, the hospital's medical superintendent, Dr. James Cassidy, filed his quarterly report to the commissioners in lunacy. The report is formulaic: patient admissions, discharges, deaths, dietary expenditures, condition of the building fabric. But appended to the March report is a short memorandum, not part of the standard form. It concerns Ward C specifically. Dr. Cassidy writes that 2 patients on the ward had, on separate occasions in February, complained of what he calls an inversion of lamplight. One patient, a Margaret Fenton, admitted for melancholia, stated that the shadows in the corridor moved against the flame. The second patient's name is redacted in the surviving copy, but the complaint is recorded as identical. Cassidy attributes both reports to disordered perception. He recommends no action. He does not mention the photograph. There is no evidence he ever saw it. Return to the image. Edith Poole stands in that corridor. The chair behind her is empty. The shadows of every fixed object obey the light. Hers does not. She is 26 years old in this photograph. Employment records confirm she began service at Lancaster Moor in 1883, assigned to the women's wards. Her conduct record is clean. No reprimands. No absences. She resigned from the hospital on the 9th of April, 1886. Less than 2 months after this plate was exposed. Her letter of resignation does not survive, but the hospital's staff register, notes the reason for departure in a single printed code. PR personal reasons. In 1912, the Lancashire Daily Post published a retrospective feature on Lancaster Moor Hospital, coinciding with proposed renovations. The article includes interviews with former staff. One of them is a woman, identified only as E or EP, who had served as a nurse in the 1880s. The interviewer asks about conditions on the wards. EP gives measured, professional answers. But near the end of the piece, she is quoted as saying something unusual. There was a corridor in C ward where the light did not behave as it should. I do not mean it flickered. I mean it fell in the wrong direction. I reported it to no one because I did not believe anyone would understand what I meant. The interviewer does not follow up. The article moves on to plumbing. Now, consider the photograph one final time. The corridor, the gas lamps flaring on the left, the chair, the iron pipes, and Edith Poole, standing still for the camera, her hands folded, her face betraying nothing. Every shadow in the image agrees with the physics of that hallway, except hers. The wrong shadow does not distort. It does not fade at the edges. It is geometrically precise, as sharp as every other shadow in the frame, simply cast in the impossible direction. As though the light that created it was not coming from the gas lamps on the wall, as though it was coming from somewhere inside Edith Poole herself. The plate is still held at the Lancashire Archives. Reference LMH-C-07. It has never been formally analyzed. No optical study has been published. The penciled word defective remains the only official assessment. Dr. Cassidy's memorandum was never referenced again in any subsequent report. Margaret Fenton was discharged in 1887. Her case file makes no further mention of inverted shadows. Edith Poole disappears from all Lancashire records after 1912. One photograph, one shadow falling the wrong way, two patients who saw the same impossibility with their own eyes, and a nurse who waited 26 years before she told anyone what she had seen. The corridor in Ward C was demolished during the 1953 renovations. No photographs of the demolition survive. The question that remains is not whether the shadow is wrong. The plate confirms that it is. The question is, what was casting it? If you have seen a similar anomaly in archival photography, describe it below. The archive is always listening.